So our lead this hour comes from the NBA. It is not about a specific game in the NBA. It is more about bad blood. In this story in La La Land, the latest chapter in the never-ending soap opera, Playhouse. This one involving the Lakers and the Clippers. Lakers and the Clippers, the blood feud. If you didn't see this, maybe you did not, a bench warmer, someone named Jared Dudley. Apparently he plays for the Lakers, and he has a newly published book that is out. It's about the bubble. It's all about the bubble. He wrote about the trash talking his poor Laker teammates had to endure, the hardship at the hands of the Clippers. And there's some excerpts of the book. Just imagine I'm the one that is the actual book. You're reading the book. It's books on tape. Dudley wrote this book. He said, we hear some of those guys, meaning the Clippers, talking about how they're the team to beat in L.A., Dudley wrote. He then said it's okay, it's fine if Kawhi says stuff like that, Kawhi Leonard. He's a defending champion. We don't trip if someone like Patrick Beverley's talking trash, Dudley said. That's how he feeds his family. We get it. We respect the hustle. But he went on to say, Dudley, but we think it's disrespectful for Paul George, who hasn't won, to put himself on the level of Bron and AD, wrote Dudley angrily. This motivates us, he said in the book. When we see those guys around the compound, he's talking about the bubble, we don't really kick it with them. But wait, there's more. Jared Dudley also claimed in this book that the Lakers were offended by the Billboard campaign around Los Angeles. They even put one up, he said, around the purple and gold practice facilities. Blasphemy. Paul George was asked about this after the Clippers bludgeoned the Cavaliers, took them to the woodshed in the second half. Good win by the Paper Clips to end a long sojourn around the eastern part of the United States. They'll go back to L.A. and play the Celtics on Friday. But here is Paul George commenting on the book, asked about what he thought of that.
Who book was it?
Jared Dudley. He basically said that the Lakers were motivated by this comment that you made on Media Day, but just about how you and Kawhi were going to be a tough duo to beat.
God bless him. God bless you, Jared Dudley. I don't know what it is. Dudes love throwing my name and stuff, but God bless you, Jared. Next question.
All right, next question. So let us discuss the question. What do you make of this visceral reaction by a Laker player to Paul George? So much he put in a book. All right, so I have Hemingway, Red Flag, and Therapy Dog, and we will connect all of this together. Now, first of all, we are sitting ringside. Think of us as the judge for a heavyweight bout. The Clippers continue time and again in these little dust-ups to run circles around the Lakers. Another embarrassing chapter in the history of that franchise, the Lakers there. They continue to pick up losses. Jared Dudley is a scrub of all scrubs. Now he's the spokesman about the dynamics between the Lakers and the Clippers. He's an author. Jared Dudley. You want to take a guess how long? This is my favorite part. How long this book, it's called Inside the NBA Bubble. How many pages do you think this book is? How long? You think it's like 350 pages, 400 pages, 500 pages? You want to take a guess? What do you think? Maybe it's shorter than that. Maybe you think like 300 pages. You got a number in your head? All right. Jared Dudley of the Lakers, a book that we are referencing here, had a grand total of, wait for it, 42 pages. 42 pages. You talk about a modern day Hemingway, right? Ernest Hemingway mixed with Edgar Allan Poe. That is 42 pages. Back home, we call that a pamphlet, not a book, but they call it a book. If they say it's a book, it must be a book. They said it was a book. Keep in mind, the Lakers were in the bubble for 82 days. That is 2 months and 3 weeks inside the Mickey Mouse ecosystem. And plausibly, Jared Dudley was part of all of that, and he could only find 42 pages of content. That's it for his manifesto? I guess not much was going on. All right, now, secondly, this entire chapter is comical, right? It's comical. For Paul George, we heard his response. It is flattering and humbling because Paul George continues to live rent-free in the heads of the players around the NBA. It's not just the Lakers here. We're talking about this because one of their players wrote a book. What a dope. What a Mama Luke. But PG-13, a polarizing player. Listen, I am at my wit's end with Paul George. Yeah, he has played very well this season, and he has played like the guy that had been with the Indiana Pacers back in the day. But he is the agent provocateur of the NBA. He's got that smug approach that stirs up a hornet's nest. It does. Keep in mind, when available, the thing about Paul George, which is maddening, is that when he has been available, when he was ready to leave the Pacers, and then in Oklahoma City, when the thought was that he could be moved on from there, it was just going to be a stopover. It turned out to be a stopover, even though he signed an extension. 95% of the NBA at one point or another has attempted to acquire and poach the skills of Paul George, including the Laker historians. Remember when he was in Oklahoma City and they were rhythmically chanting his name when he came in with the Thunder to save them from the lottery, the losers that they had been, and PG-13. You know what he is? He's like a red flag to a bull. He's a red flag to a bull. Paul George has played at an all-pro level this season. He has. Now, doesn't matter because he's got to do that in the playoffs. In the last few years, trap door has opened up in the playoffs, and you were ultimately judged in the playoffs. It's like we talk about in baseball, Clayton Kershaw, all right? Kershaw had a fine season last year in the shortened, truncated 2020 baseball season, but it didn't matter until he got it done in the playoffs, and he almost didn't get it done in the playoffs, right? He had a hiccup in the playoffs, but in the end, he did get it done. So the opportunity is there. We've told the story. It's happened a lot recently, mostly in baseball. David Price with the Red Sox, born loser, and then in the postseason run 2018 when the Red Sox were cheating, but he pitched very well for the Red Sox in that playoff run. So it happens. You're a bum. You can't win the big one until you do, and then the story goes away. And Paul George will have the opportunity to do that, but Jared Dudley with the audacity, though, to say it was disrespectful for Paul George to put himself on the level with LeBron and Anthony Davis. Now, you can say, well, LeBron's in a different category, but Anthony Davis? That is silly city, is what that is. Anthony Davis took the easy path. He hitched his wagon to the LeBron choo-choo train, and as a standalone star in New Orleans, AD, the unibrow, was an injury-prone failure in the winning department. The Pelicans were nothing special. Paul George did more to lead the Indiana Pacers back in his salad days in Indianapolis than Anthony Davis did in the Bayou. All right, final thought. So Jared Dudley, who I believe is semi-retired at this point, he's still plausibly on a roster. He's a glorified cheerleader. The biggest concern Dudley has these days is getting hemorrhoids from sitting on the bench, sitting on his keister. But I know the deal. He's one of these guys. We see this all the time. He's one of these guys that's chomping at the bit for one of those cushy TV jobs when he's done playing, and he's just waiting around, and he'll get one, right? Now, my other part of the story I love is the Billboard Neurosis. The Billboard Neurosis. And when I had to read these excerpts twice because I'm not buying the book. It's 42 pages. What is that, like 42 cents, a cent a page? Anyway, like Clippers owner Steve Ballmer gets the jewel of the NBA offseason, gets two of the top professional basketball players to come play for the Clips at the same time. And the other team is flustered by a marketing campaign, which shows you the Clippers actually run L.A. and the Lakers need some therapy dogs, right? They're like, we don't have enough billboards. The Clippers have the billboards. It's not fair. It's not fair. Oh, my God. Now, listen, the Clippers stubbed their toe against the Nuggets, but knowledgeable basketball fans know that they would have KO'd the purple and gold if they had matched up in the playoffs. The Lakers were extremely lucky. They weren't great. They were lucky that they were able to avoid the Clippers, and they were insulated inside the bubble. If not, they would have had to see uncomfortable billboards, and they could have been triggered by that, and maybe hecklers and booing and hissing and all that. But all that was eliminated in the sterile, joyless gymnasiums in the Orlando area. All right, now Clipper coach Ty Lue was asked about Dudley's criticism. Now, obviously, Ty Lue's he's a compromise. He's biased. He's the Clippers coach, and he's Paul George's coach. But he had a great response because he initially, when asked about this before the Clipper-Cavs game, started laughing when he was told that Jared Dudley was credited as an author for writing a book. He said, which I think everyone had the same reaction. But are you actually an author? Because one of my goals has been to write a book. I'd like to get a book done, and that's all been delayed right now. But I'd love to do it. I've been talking to a few people about, one person in particular about writing a book, and seeing what will come of that. But if a book only has to be 42 pages, I can get that done in a weekend. All right, I get 42 pages done in a weekend. Boom. All right, that's easy. That's simple. Now, if it's a real book, to me, a real book is like, what's a real book? I think like 200 pages, real book. Now, there have been a lot of books that have been short books that have been very successful, and the most famous would be Sun Tzu, The Art of War, which was a very short book, but that was like hundreds of years ago. Hundreds of years.